911. This is an emergency. How long it'll be? Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not? Yes. And you're unable to talk because... Right. Is there someone in the room with you? Just say yes or no. Yes. Okay, it looks like I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house? No. Can you stay on the phone with me? No. Can you stand? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sadie Jennerine. The video you just watched was a commercial that was aired 2 weeks ago at the Super Bowl. And what you heard was a woman who called 911. However, she was too afraid to speak, and she pretended she was talking to the pizza delivery guy because she was afraid that she was going to be beat or even worse, killed by her partner. This could be classified as abuse, and underneath abuse, there's 3 different types. There's emotional, mental, and physical. And through physical abuse can come domestic violence, which is what my group and I are going to be talking about. Domestic violence is the violent or aggressive behavior within a home, and it can occur between any type of relationship in a house, between intimate partners, children, or other relationships in a family. And there are multiple factors that can increase the likelihood of this crime to occur, which could be low income, race, or age. And generally, the crimes that occur, the domestic violence crimes that occur with minorities because they're more likely to earn less money, and that's according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. It's just something to act out because of stress. And the most prominent type of domestic violence occurs between intimate partners, as it accounts for 15%. However, with that being said, domestic violence crimes still make up 21% of all the crimes occurred. That raises a question. How can domestic violence affect different types of relationships within a family? Faith will now discuss how it can affect an individual and the problems it can cause.
As Sadie mentioned, the mental effects of domestic violence are very severe, especially for the victims involved. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is defined by the National Center of PTSD as reliving events, avoiding situations, depression, and hypervigilance. All these symptoms come under the overarching theme of PTSD, but an individual doesn't necessarily have all of these effects upon them. Now, depression is the most common of these. Depression is more than just feeling sad and having a low self-esteem for these people. The Harvard Medical School experimented and saw that the hippocampus, or the part of the brain that controls their emotions, was 9 to 13% smaller than those who had not had depression before in their life. This means that they're not just struggling to come over their sadness. This means that their part of the brain is not developed and it cannot grow because they're not using it well enough in their society. And because of this, 15% of depressed victims will commit suicide in their life because of this part of the brain. Lastly, hypervigilance is when the body becomes hyper-aware of everything around it, meaning you're intensely focused on one thing all the time. Dr. Eamon McCrory in the Journal of Neuroscience studied the veterans from war and the victims of domestic violence and saw that 2 parts of the brain that control the fight-or-flight symptoms were the most intense during this time, and they had too much adrenaline inside of them. So because of this, they could not calm down, and they were unable to overcome this. And what I learned is that there's not necessarily a cure to all these things, but rather they have to learn how to cope with them and be able to overcome their fears over time. Now, as noted, Sadie will go back to the physical effects of domestic violence.
Along with the mental and emotional effects that Faith just spoke on, there are also physical effects. And by these pictures, you can see that domestic violence can get very abusive. And when a person is abused, they're often abused repeatedly. And this includes sometimes bruising, kicking, choking, and sometimes it can get so intense that it can lead to death. And initially, I understood that physical effects could be very dangerous, but what Faith just spoke on about the mental and emotional effects, like through the research, I've learned that there are other problems that can come through domestic violence other than just physical effects. It's important to know that though there are mental, physical effects, and emotional effects that can affect the victim specifically, It can also affect the family as a whole, and Vivian will speak on how it can affect family relationships.
The Joyful Heart Foundation, an organization in which its intention it is to help domestic violence victims heal from their traumatic experiences, states that there are 6.2 million cases that consist of child abuse and neglect each year. Also, there are 15 million children who witness violence in their homes each year. The National Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Counseling Service defines domestic family violence as a pattern of abusive behavior in an intimate relationship that over time puts one person in a position of power over another, thus causing fear. In the beginning of my research, I think that we all believe that domestic violence was sort of one of those other crimes that you don't really pay attention to. However, through the research, I found that the statistics don't only call for thousands, but millions of people that go through domestic violence each year. And that is heartbreaking. So now that I know more about domestic violence, I can be vigilant in my surroundings, and I can raise awareness to others and possibly save a life. And now, Nadia will elaborate more on how children and families are affected by domestic violence.
Annually, millions of children are abused each year. This chart just shows the amount of children abused in Ohio. But this is just in the thousands already. The column on the left shows the number of calls my children made, and the column on the right shows the number of children witnesses. So, abuse can have long-lasting emotional, behavioral, and learning effects. Some of the emotional effects include anger, sadness, trauma, anxiety, and fear. This can carry out in their family lives by having them fear their own family members and becoming less interactive with their family. Behavioral issues also occur. This can cause low self-esteem, oppositional behavior, and difficulty eating and sleeping. This interferes with their daily patterns, and it makes a person's identity change completely. This can also result in dissociation. Lastly, there's learning. This can cause poor school performance, lower cognitive function, and limited problem-solving skills. Potentially, domestic violence can be the difference between a person's success because they can't perform as well in school as they did before. So, what does this all mean? Well, it can lead to mimicking behavior and beginning a cycle of domestic violence in the family that carries on from generation to generation. So, some people may say that it's teaching their kids a lesson, that hitting their kids is a way to teach them what they did was wrong. Well, it can have a lot of consequences, especially mentally and not just physically. It can have long-term effects, and it can have emotional, behavioral, and learning problems to the children. So, at the beginning of the research, I believed that domestic violence was wrong, but I didn't know about all the mental effects it can cause for a child. It can cause physical effects and mental effects like the ones mentioned above, and it's just wrong for anyone to go through. And Vivian will conclude.
No matter the type of domestic violence case, there are always options for the victims, such as hotlines. For example, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is open 24 hours and is free of charge. There are also websites that offer an online chat option, which gives the victim a chance to talk one-on-one with a trained representative. There are also shelters, such as the Harbor House here in Central Florida, that offer counseling, education, and support groups. But these are not only three of the programs that are offered in such as stated by the Third Florida Statute 39.905. Despite shelters being very open and accessible, victims who do not accept the help that they are given are sort of in trouble. Sometimes victims may only stay for one night and then decide to go back to their abuser the next, or maybe they would reject their counseling. Shelters are also only a temporary option. Nonetheless, no matter the type of, whether it's intimate partner violence or domestic family violence, it is never okay to perform a violent act against someone. In order to get rid of domestic violence, or even lower the statistics dramatically, we need to learn how to live in a healthier environment by focusing on the positives and acknowledging the negatives. And through raising awareness, for example, in the Grammy Awards recently, they dedicated a whole segment to domestic violence. Even our president spoke on the issue. No one deserves a life where they feel unsafe or threatened in their own home. When it's hard to talk, it's up to us to listen. Thank you.
Was there any evidence Was there any evidence that you guys gathered that you didn't use, and then why didn't you use it?
Well, I was able to see some individual case studies of people who had talked about their domestic violence, but I felt like we didn't need to include that just to protect their identity and just keep them safe from the people who had physically abused them.
How much did your research question evolve as you moved through this entire process?
I think originally we wanted to do, like, we thought of domestic violence, and then our questions sort of go into specifics when it went to intimate partners or even domestic families. So as we gathered research, we figured out that there was like 2 types of domestic violence, and from there we created our question.
If you guys have more time, what more would you have done?
Well, we're gonna talk about more like specific cases, I think, because we saw some cases about like Ray Rice and the NFL, which is very popular, and we could have included more statistics and more charts and talked more in depth about the different kinds of relationships that domestic violence can occur in.
Right. As a group of 4 women, and I know domestic violence isn't just women, men or males are victims of it as well, but as a group of 4 women, how did you guys grow in this process of learning about domestic violence?
I feel like we felt very strongly about domestic violence, and we know it's bad, and as women, and I feel like we all have like feminist views and stuff, that through the research, like, you see how you can also help, and like, if there was this were to happen, like how to overcome, like the help you can seek, and I don't know, I just felt like we were all just really like adamant about this like question.
All right, thank you.